Captain Jiwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the main view screen. Her hands were steady on the command console, but her heart was beating fast. This was it. Humanity's first faster-than-light jump. After decades of preparation, Earth was finally ready to reach for the stars. "All systems green, Captain," said Engineer Taehyun Park from his station. His fingers danced over the controls as he made final checks. "The quantum drive is running perfectly. We should reach Proxima Centauri in about 6 hours." Jiwoo nodded and looked around at her crew. Dr. Yoonji Lee sat at the science station, her eyes bright with excitement. She had been waiting her whole life to study alien worlds. Communications Officer Minho Choi was testing the long-range transmitters, making sure Earth would receive their reports. Chief Medical Officer Hye-in Song was checking her medical supplies one more time just in case. "This is a big day for humanity," Jiwoo said to her crew. "We're not just taking our first step into space. We're announcing to the universe that Earth is ready to join the galactic community." She had no idea how right she was or how wrong everything was about to go. "Beginning jump sequence," Taehyun announced. The ship's engines hummed louder as power flowed into the quantum drive. "Jump in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jumping now." The stars outside twisted and stretched. Reality bent around the New Seoul as it slipped between dimensions. For a moment, everything was silent and strange. Then, with a flash of light, they emerged back into normal space. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Instead of empty space and distant stars, they were surrounded by massive crystalline walls that stretched up forever. Golden light filled the air around them. Strange alien architecture rose in impossible spirals and curves. And directly in front of them, sitting on a throne the size of a building, was something that definitely was not human. Captain?" Minho's voice was very quiet. "I don't think this is Proxima Centauri." The being on the throne was 12 feet tall, covered in silver scales, with 6 arms and glowing red eyes. Around the throne room, dozens of other alien creatures stood frozen in shock. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living rock. One group seemed to be floating balls of light with tentacles. All of them were staring at the human ship with complete terror. "Well," Jiwoo said, trying to keep her voice calm, "this is new." Dr. Yoonji was already taking notes, completely fascinated by what she was seeing. "Captain, the architecture here is amazing. Look at how they've used crystalline structures to channel natural light. And these alien species, I count at least 15 different types of beings." "Yoonji," Jiwoo said patiently, "I think we might have bigger problems right now." The giant alien on the throne slowly stood up. His voice boomed across the vast chamber, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding stone mixed with angry thunder. The other aliens immediately fell to the ground, pressing their faces against the floor. "Translation coming through," Minho reported. "The computer is working on the language patterns, got it. He's saying, who dares enter the sacred throne room of Thexmor the Eternal, Supreme Emperor of the Varaxian Empire, Crusher of Worlds, Destroyer of the Weak, Master of 1,000 Systems?" Jiwoo looked at the terrified aliens on the floor, then at the angry Emperor, then at her crew. This was definitely not in the first contact manual. "Open a channel," she told Minho. "Are you sure, Captain? He seems pretty upset about something." "We're explorers, not invaders. The least we can do is introduce ourselves properly." Minho opened the communication link. Jiwoo cleared her throat and spoke into the microphone. "Hello there. Sorry about barging in like this. I'm Captain Jiwoo Kim of the Earthship New Seoul. We seem to have had a navigation error. Could you point us toward the nearest gas station? We're running a bit low on fuel." The throne room went completely silent. Even the Emperor stopped moving. Several aliens on the floor turned their heads slightly to stare at the human ship, their eyes wide with disbelief. "Did she just?" one of the rock creatures whispered. "Ask for directions?" finished an insect being. "From the Emperor?" Emperor Thexmor blinked his 6 red eyes very slowly. In 3,000 years of ruling the galaxy, no species had ever entered his throne room uninvited. The punishment for such an act was always immediate death, usually by being fed to his pet voidworms. But more than that, no one had ever spoken to him so casually. Species either begged for mercy or tried to sound impressive with formal speeches about their great civilizations. No one had ever asked him for directions to a gas station. "What?" the Emperor said slowly. "Is a gas station?" "Oh, you know," Jiwoo replied cheerfully. "A place to refuel. We use hydrogen for our quantum drive. Any place that sells starship fuel would be great." Dr. Yunji leaned toward her microphone. "Also, if you don't mind me asking, those crystal formations in your walls are fascinating. Are they naturally grown or artificially created? The light refraction patterns suggest a very sophisticated understanding of quantum optics." The Emperor looked even more confused. "You want to study my palace?" "Only if you don't mind. I'm a xenobiologist and I've never seen architecture like this. Earth scientists would be thrilled to learn about your construction techniques." Engineer Taehyun joined the conversation. "Speaking of construction, whoever designed your gravity systems did amazing work. We're detecting at least 12 different gravitational fields working in harmony. That's incredible engineering." Security Chief Yuna Kang, who had been quietly scanning the area, added her own observation. "Your defensive systems are pretty impressive too, though I notice a few weak points in your sensor coverage. The blind spots around sections 7 and 12 could be improved with some repositioning." Emperor Thexmore sat back down on his throne very slowly. His advisors were whispering frantically to each other. The prostrate aliens were starting to peek up from the floor, watching this impossible conversation. "You are..." The Emperor paused, searching for words. "You are offering to help improve my defenses?" "Sure, if you want," Yuna replied. "We're all in this together, right? Space can be dangerous. Everyone should have good security." One of the Emperor's advisors, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, stepped forward nervously. "Your Imperial Majesty," these beings appear to be from an unknown species. "They have entered the sacred throne room without permission, yet they show no fear. They speak as if you were their equal." "I noticed that too," the Emperor said quietly. His voice had lost some of its booming authority and gained a note of curiosity. "Tell me, Captain Kim, do you know who I am?" Jiwoo thought about it. "Well, your friend there said you're Emperor Thexmore of the Varaxian Empire. So I guess you're the leader around here. Nice to meet you. I'm sorry we dropped in unannounced. Like I said, navigation error." "The Varaxian Empire controls over 3,000 star systems," the Emperor said, watching Jiwoo's reaction carefully. "I have ruled for 3 millennia. Entire species tremble at the mention of my name." 3,000 systems? Wow, that's a lot of responsibility, Jiwoo said sympathetically. "And 3,000 years? You must be really tired. Running a government is hard work even for just one planet. I can't imagine managing thousands." The Emperor blinked again. "You... pity." "Me?" "Not pity exactly, but I admire your dedication. Though you should probably delegate more. All that stress can't be good for your health." Chief Medical Officer Hyein Song suddenly spoke up. "Captain, looking at the Emperor's vital signs through our sensors, he's showing elevated stress hormones, irregular heart rhythm, and signs of chronic fatigue. Your Majesty, when was the last time you took a vacation?" "A vacation?" The Emperor looked like he was trying to understand an alien concept, which, in a way, he was. You know, time off, rest, and relaxation. Maybe visit a nice planet with good beaches, read a book, spend time with family. "I do not take vacations," the Emperor said automatically. "I rule, I conquer, I crush rebellions." "That sounds exhausting," Hyein said with genuine concern. "No wonder you're so stressed. Emperor or not, everyone needs downtime." The blue advisor leaned closer to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, I believe these creatures are either insane or the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They show no fear whatsoever." The Emperor studied the human ship floating in his throne room. The crew seemed genuinely friendly and helpful. They offered advice, asked scientific questions, and worried about his health. In 3,000 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. "Captain Kim," he said finally, "where exactly did you intend to go when you made this navigation error?" "Proxima Centauri. It's our closest neighboring star system. We were going to do some basic exploration, maybe set up a research station if we found any interesting planets, and your species, humanity, how large is your empire?" Jiwoo laughed. "Empire? We don't have an empire. We just have Earth. This is actually our first trip outside our own solar system. We only figured out faster than light travel about 2 years ago." The throne room went silent again. The Emperor's advisors stared at each other in shock. An entire, spacefaring species that had never left their home system? Impossible. And yet, "You are telling me," the Emperor said slowly, "that your entire civilization consists of one planet? You have no military conquests, no subject species, no Emperor Thexmore's proposal was simple. He would allow the humans to stay in his palace for 3 days as honored guests. During this time, they could study his empire and learn about galactic civilization. In return, they would tell him about Earth and humanity. If, after 3 days, he was satisfied with what he learned, he would help them find fuel and guide them home. What the Emperor did not tell them was that this was a test. No species had ever lasted 3 days in his palace without either begging for mercy or trying to escape. He expected these strange humans to reveal their true nature soon enough. Captain Jiwoo accepted the offer immediately. "That sounds wonderful. Thank you for your hospitality, Emperor Thexmore. We'll try not to be any trouble." The Emperor assigned them guest quarters in the palace's east wing. As the humans settled in, he watched them through the palace surveillance systems, waiting for signs of fear or hidden aggression. Instead, he saw Dr. Eunji setting up a portable laboratory in her room. She was already analyzing air samples and taking notes about the palace's atmosphere. Engineer Taehyun was examining the room's power systems, not to sabotage them, but because he was genuinely curious about how they worked. Communications Officer Minho was perhaps the most dangerous of all. He had connected his personal music player to the room's entertainment system and was now broadcasting something called K-pop through the palace's internal network. The Emperor listened in horror as upbeat music with strange rhythms began playing in corridors that had echoed with the screams of enemies for 3,000 years. Worse, some of the younger palace staff were starting to hum along. "Turn that off immediately," the Emperor commanded his chief of security. "We tried, Your Majesty. The human's device has somehow integrated with our systems. Our technicians can't figure out how to disconnect it without shutting down the entire communication network." The Emperor rubbed his temples with 4 of his 6 hands. Day 1 of the human visit was not going as planned. Things got worse at dinner. The Emperor had prepared a formal feast meant to demonstrate his power and wealth. The dining hall was set with golden plates made from rare metals mined from conquered worlds. The food was prepared by the finest chefs from across the galaxy. Exotic creatures served as entertainment, performing deadly combat dances that usually terrified guests into submission. The humans arrived exactly on time, with Captain Jiwoo wearing what appeared to be her best uniform. They looked around the enormous dining hall with obvious appreciation. "This is beautiful," Dr. Eunji said, examining the wall carvings. "These sculptures tell stories, don't they? Is this your empire's history?" "It is the record of my conquests," the Emperor replied, watching for signs of fear. "Fascinating. The artistic style suggests a culture that values both strength and beauty. The craftsmanship is incredible." The Emperor paused. That was not the usual response to his wall of terror. Dinner began with the Emperor's traditional speech about his mighty empire and the fate of those who opposed him. He spoke of worlds burned to ash, species driven to extinction, rebellions crushed under his iron rule. The alien servants trembled as he recounted his victories. The humans listened politely and took notes. "Excuse me," Chief Medical Officer Heen interrupted during a particularly dramatic description of the siege of Altair 7. "Sorry to jump in, but that story about the 3-year siege concerns me. You said your troops went without proper medical care for months?" "Yes." It was a test of their loyalty and strength. But that's terrible. Treatable injuries became permanent disabilities. Preventable diseases spread through the ranks. You lost thousands of soldiers who could have been saved. With basic medical intervention, the Emperor stared at her. You are criticizing my military strategy? I'm worried about your people's health and well-being. A good leader takes care of their followers. Letting soldiers suffer when you could help them isn't strength. It's waste. Hiean's right, added Jiwoo. The best commanders in Earth's history were the ones who cared about their troops. Healthy, well-cared-for soldiers fight better and stay loyal longer. The Emperor had never considered this perspective. In his culture, suffering was strength and caring was weakness. But these humans seemed genuinely concerned about the welfare of his soldiers who had been dead for over 1,000 years. You would heal the troops of your enemies? He asked. They're not our enemies, Hien said, confused. They're people. Everyone deserves medical care. The dinner continued with more cultural confusion. When the combat dancers began their lethal performance, Security Chief Yuna Kang watched with professional interest. Nice technique, she commented, as two dancers fought with energy blades. Though their footwork leaves them vulnerable to low attacks, and they're putting too much power behind each strike, it looks impressive, but it wastes energy. The Emperor leaned forward. You understand combat? I've studied martial arts since I was 6. These dancers are skilled, but they're performing. For show rather than effectiveness. In a real fight, they'd be in trouble. Perhaps you would like to join them? Yuna considered this. Sure, if they want to learn some new moves. I could show them some techniques that might improve their form. The Emperor's combat dancers had never been offered tips on improvement. They had certainly never been asked if they wanted to learn new fighting styles. The most feared warriors in the galaxy found themselves comparing notes with a human security officer about proper sword grip and defensive postures. Meanwhile, archaeologist Donghyun Lim was having the time of his life examining the palace's artifacts. Each item told a story of conquest and dominion, but Donghyun saw them as windows into lost civilizations. This crystal sculpture is amazing, he told the Emperor during dessert. The species that made this had an incredible understanding of light manipulation. What happened to them? I destroyed their homeworld when they refused to surrender. Oh. Donghyun looked sad. That's a terrible loss. They were clearly master artists. Imagine what they could have created if they'd had more time. They were rebels who defied my authority. But think about all the art and knowledge that was lost forever. When civilizations are destroyed, everyone loses. The galaxy becomes a little bit smaller, a little bit less interesting. The Emperor had never thought about his conquests in terms of lost potential. To him, defeated enemies were simply obstacles removed. But this human archaeologist mourned for civilizations the Emperor had forgotten centuries ago. The final surprise came during the entertainment portion of the evening. The Emperor's court musicians began playing the traditional songs of submission, dark, intimidating music meant to remind guests of their place in the cosmic order. Minho listened for a few minutes, then raised his hand politely. Excuse me, but could I add something to the music? I think our styles might complement each other really well. Before the Emperor could respond, Minho had connected his equipment to the palace sound system. Suddenly, the dark, threatening music was joined by cheerful human melodies. The combination should have been horrible, but somehow it worked. The alien musicians found themselves playing along with rhythms they'd never heard before. Several court members began moving to the beat. The Emperor watched in amazement as his most dignified advisors started swaying slightly to the music. What? Is this sorcery? Demanded the blue advisor. It's called collaboration, Minho explained. When different musical traditions work together, they create something new and beautiful, like what we're doing right now. By the end of the evening, half the court was humming human songs. The Emperor's fearsome combat dancers were comparing techniques with Yuna. Dr. Yunji had 3 different alien scientists excited about joint research projects. And archaeologist Dongyun had sparked a palace-wide discussion about preserving cultural heritage instead of destroying it. The Emperor retreated to his private chambers feeling more confused than he had in centuries. His advisors, followed, all talking at once. "Your Majesty, these humans are dangerous," said the Blue Advisor. "They show no respect for proper protocol. They corrupted the evening's entertainment," complained the court musician. "They questioned military strategy that has worked for millennia," added the general. "And yet," the Emperor said thoughtfully, "they offered to help improve our defenses. They worried about the health of my soldiers. They mourned the loss of civilizations I destroyed. They are either fools or master manipulators." The Emperor looked out his window at the human ship, still floating peacefully in his throne room. Inside, he could see the crew moving around, settling in for the night. Captain Jiwoo was reading what appeared to be a book. Dr. Yunji was organizing her notes. They looked comfortable and relaxed, as if floating in the heart of a galactic empire's power was the most natural thing in the world. "Perhaps," the Emperor said slowly, "they are something else entirely." That night, strange reports came from all over the palace. Human music was still playing in the corridors, and the staff couldn't stop humming along. Several alien species who had barely spoken to each other in centuries were now comparing notes about their homeworlds, inspired by the humans' interest in different cultures. Most disturbing of all, palace efficiency was actually improving. Taehyun's suggestions about power distribution had solved energy problems that had plagued the palace for decades. On the second day of their stay, Emperor Thexmore made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. He called Captain Jiwoo to his private office, a smaller room filled with star charts and tactical displays showing his vast empire. "Captain Kim," he began, settling into a chair that was only slightly smaller than his throne. "I have been thinking about our conversation yesterday." "I hope we didn't offend you with all our questions," Jiwoo replied. "We're naturally curious about new places and people. That is precisely what interests me. Your species seems remarkably adaptable. I would like to test this quality." Jiwoo leaned forward. "What kind of test?" The Emperor pointed to a star map, highlighting a red dot near the edge of his territory. "This is Kepler 442b. The inhabitants, there have been difficult. They refuse to pay tribute, ignore my commands, and have successfully resisted my forces for nearly 2 decades. Sounds like they're pretty determined to stay independent. Indeed, I have lost 3 invasion fleets trying to bring them back under control. My advisors recommend using planet-killing weapons to make an example of them." Jiwoo looked shocked. "You destroy an entire world just because they don't want to pay taxes? It is the way of empire. Submit or be destroyed. That seems like an awful waste. I mean, if they're that good at defending themselves, they must be pretty clever people. Maybe instead of fighting them, you could try talking to them?" The Emperor studied her face. "You truly believe negotiation could succeed where military might has failed? It's worth a try, isn't it? What's the worst that could happen? If talking doesn't work, you'd just be back where you started." This was exactly the opening the Emperor had been hoping for. "Very well. I propose to send you and your crew to Kepler 442b as my representatives. If you can succeed where my armies have failed, I will consider your species worthy of respect. If you fail, we'll probably learn something interesting either way," Jiwoo said with a smile. "Sure, we'll give it a try. Though I should mention, we're explorers, not diplomats. We might not do things the usual way." "I am counting on that." What Emperor Thexmore did not tell Captain Jiwoo was that this was meant to be a death sentence. Kepler 442b was known throughout the galaxy as the planet that broke imperial fleets. The inhabitants, called Keplerians, were fierce warriors who had turned their entire world into a fortress. They had destroyed every diplomatic mission the Empire had ever sent. The Emperor expected the humans to be captured, tortured for information, and then executed as a warning to other worlds. This would prove that human friendliness was just a facade, and their deaths would justify destroying both Earth and Kepler 442b as examples to the rest of the galaxy. 3 days later, the new Sol dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b. The planet looked beautiful from orbit, blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds swirling in peaceful patterns. It was hard to believe this was the world that had defied a galactic empire for 20 years. Scanning for life signs, reported Dr. Yunji. Population approximately 2 billion. Technology level appears comparable to our own. Wait, I'm detecting massive defensive installations across the entire planet. Those aren't just defensive, added Yuna, studying the tactical displays. They've got enough firepower to destroy a small moon. No wonder the Emperor's fleets had problems. Incoming transmission, Minho announced. They're hailing us. The sea. Main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Keplerian. The alien looked humanoid but with blue-green skin, large golden eyes, and delicate features. Behind her, the humans could see what appeared to be a military command center. Unknown vessel, the Keplerian said in accented but clear galactic standard. You are approaching Kepler 442b, a free and independent world. State your business, or depart immediately. Captain Jiwoo stepped forward. Hello, I'm Captain Jiwoo Kim of the Earth vessel New Seoul. We're here on behalf of Emperor Thexmore to talk about the current situation between your world and the Varaxian Empire. The Keplerian's expression hardened. Another Imperial negotiation team. How disappointing. I am Commander Lyra Vex, leader of Kepler 442b's defense forces. Our answer is the same as always. We will never surrender to tyranny. Oh, we're not here to ask you to surrender, Jiwoo said quickly. We just want to understand what's going on. Maybe find a solution that works for everyone. Commander Vex looked confused. You are not demanding our submission? Why would we do that? We just met you 5 minutes ago. It seems a bit rude to start making demands. There was a long pause. Commander Vex turned to speak with someone off-screen, then looked back at the humans. Captain Kim, are you truly representing the Varaxian Empire? Well, the Emperor asked us to come talk to you. We're new to galactic politics, so we're probably not doing this the normal way. Would you be willing to meet in person? We'd love to learn about your world. Another pause. Then Commander Vex made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Very well, you may land at the coordinates I'm transmitting. But be warned, any sign of treachery will result in your immediate destruction. Understood. Thank you for giving us a chance. The New Seoul landed at a military spaceport surrounded by defensive towers and armed soldiers. As the humans emerged from their ship, hundreds of Keplerian warriors watched them with weapons ready. Commander Vex approached with a small escort. She was tall and elegant, with the bearing of someone who had spent years fighting hopeless odds. Her uniform was practical military gear, but decorated with symbols that spoke of honor and determination. Captain Kim, she said formally, welcome to Kepler 442b. I must admit, you are not what we expected from Imperial representatives. What were you expecting? Demands for surrender, threats of destruction, the usual Imperial arrogance. Instead, you asked to learn about our world. Dr. Yunji stepped forward, looking around with obvious fascination. Your architecture is beautiful. How do you integrate defensive systems so seamlessly with civilian buildings? You are interested in our defenses? Commander Vex sounded suspicious. I'm interested in everything. The way you've designed your cities to be both functional and beautiful while maintaining security. It's incredible engineering. Engineer Taehyun nodded enthusiastically. The power distribution network alone must have taken decades to plan. How do you maintain efficiency while keeping everything hardened against attack? Commander Vex stared at them. You want to discuss engineering and architecture? If you don't mind, Captain Jiwoo said. We're explorers. Learning about different worlds and cultures is what we do. But you are here to negotiate our surrender. Actually, we're here to figure out why you don't want to be part of the Empire, and whether there might be some other arrangement that could work for everyone. Commander Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then she made another surprising decision. Come, let me show you our world. Perhaps then you will understand why we fight. The tour that followed was unlike anything in the history of Imperial diplomacy. Instead of formal meetings in sterile conference rooms, the humans were taken on a journey through Keplerian society. They visited farms where families grew food in vertical gardens integrated into defensive towers. They saw schools where children learned both mathematics and military tactics. They toured factories that produced both consumer goods and weapons, often in the same buildings. Everywhere they went, the humans asked questions. Not about military secrets or weaknesses, but about daily life, culture, and the challenges of building a society under constant threat. "This is amazing," Dr. Yunji said as they walked through a hospital that doubled as a fortress. "You've created a completely integrated defense system without sacrificing quality of life." "We had no choice," Commander Vex replied. "When the Empire came, we could either submit or adapt. We chose to adapt." "Why didn't you want to join the Empire in the first place?" asked Chief Medical Officer Hien. "What made you decide to resist?" Commander Vex stopped walking and turned to face the humans. "You truly don't know. We're new to galactic politics," Captain Jiwoo admitted. "The Emperor told us you refused to pay tribute, but that's all we know." "Tribute." Commander Vex's voice became bitter. "The Empire doesn't ask for tribute. It demands everything. Our resources, our people, our freedom. Species that join the Empire lose their identity. They become servants, slaves in all but name." "That doesn't sound right," Hien said, looking concerned. "Surely there must be some benefits to being part of a galactic community." "What benefits? The right to send our young people to die in the Emperor's wars? The privilege of watching our culture disappear as imperial customs replace our own? The kasi, joy of seeing our resources shipped away while we struggle to survive?" The humans exchanged troubled glances. This was very different from what they had expected. "Commander Vex," Captain Jiwoo said carefully, "could you show us some examples of what you're talking about? We'd like to understand the situation better." Over the next several days, the Keplerians shared their history with the visiting humans. They showed records of other worlds that had joined the Empire voluntarily, only to see their populations conscripted into imperial armies, their resources stripped away and their cultures slowly erased. "This world here," Commander Vex said, pointing to a star chart in their command center. "Altair 7. They joined the Empire 50 years ago, hoping..." Within 2 weeks of the humans' arrival on Kepler 442b, something unprecedented began happening across the galaxy. Ships from dozens of different worlds started arriving at the planet, not to conquer or threaten, but to learn about this new idea called cooperative alliance. The first visitors came from nearby systems, worlds that had been forced into the Varaxian Empire centuries ago and had never forgotten what freedom felt like. They came quietly at first, sending small research vessels and diplomatic shuttles, careful not to attract imperial attention. Commander Vex found herself hosting representatives from species she had only heard about in history books. The crystalline beings from Sigma Draconis, who communicated through colored light patterns. The hive-minded collective from Proxima Centauri b, who spoke in perfect unison. The shape-shifting traders from the Veil Nebula, who could adapt their forms to any environment. All of them had the same questions. Was it true that there was an alternative to imperial rule? Could worlds really govern themselves while still being part of a larger galactic community? And most importantly, how could they join? Captain Jiwoo found herself in the unexpected position of explaining Earth's history to audiences of fascinated aliens. "The key," she told a gathering of representatives from 12 different worlds, "is that cooperation has to be voluntary. No one forces anyone to join. No one demands tribute or conscript soldiers. Everyone contributes what they can and takes what they need." "But how do you handle disputes?" asked a delegate from the Tauseti system. "Without a supreme authority, to enforce decisions, chaos would result." Dr. Yunji, who had become the group's informal expert on social systems, answered, "Actually, Earth has thousands of different governments, and we manage to work together pretty well. When disputes arise, we negotiate, we compromise, we find solutions that work for everyone involved. And if negotiation fails, then we try mediation. Bring in neutral parties to help find common ground. The goal is always to solve problems, not to punish anyone." The alien delegates took extensive notes. Many of them came from worlds where disagreement with authority meant death. The idea that conflicts could be resolved without violence was revolutionary. Meanwhile, engineer Taihyun was having the time of his life. Every species that visited brought new technologies and innovations. The crystalline beings had developed energy storage methods that were incredibly efficient. The Hive Mind Collective had perfected distributed computing systems. The shapeshifters had created adaptive materials that could change properties on demand. This is incredible, Taehyun told Captain Jiwoo after spending a day comparing notes with alien engineers. In 2 weeks, I've learned more about advanced technology than Earth scientists have discovered in decades, and they're all willing to share freely. That's the point, Jiwoo replied. When you're not competing for dominance, you can focus on innovation and mutual benefit. The transformation wasn't limited to technology. Archaeologist Dongyun Lim was documenting cultural practices from across the galaxy, creating the first comprehensive record of galactic civilization that wasn't written from an imperial perspective. Agricultural specialist Jin Woo Han was working with farmers from dozens of worlds to develop crop varieties that could grow in different environments. Chief Medical Officer Heen Song was collaborating with alien doctors to share medical knowledge and treatment techniques. But the most significant change was psychological. For the first time in centuries, representatives from different worlds were talking to each other as equals instead of as conquerors and conquered. Back on the imperial capital, Emperor Thexmore was receiving increasingly alarming reports from his intelligence network. His spies reported that the humans' diplomatic mission had somehow transformed into the largest interstellar conference in galactic history. Your Majesty, his blue advisor said nervously, 17 systems have now sent representatives to Kepler 442b. They're calling it the First Galactic Cooperation Summit. And what are they discussing at this summit? Trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, mutual defense pacts, and something they call the Universal Declaration of Planetary Rights. The Emperor felt a chill run through his scaled body. Show me this declaration. The document that appeared on his screen was unlike anything in imperial history. Instead of demanding submission, it proclaimed that all intelligent species had the right to self-determination. Instead of establishing hierarchies of power, it proposed equality among all worlds. Instead of conquest and tribute, it outlined principles of voluntary cooperation and mutual aid. This is rebellion, the Emperor said quietly. It's worse than rebellion, Your Majesty. Rebellion is violent and can be crushed with force. This is persuasion. They're making other worlds want to leave the Empire. The Emperor studied the list of worlds that had sent representatives to Kepler 442b. Many were from the outer rim of his empire, systems that had always been troublesome to govern. But increasingly, delegations were coming from core worlds that had been loyal for centuries. What do our subject worlds say when asked about this conference? They claim they're only gathering information, but intelligence reports suggest that several are already implementing some of the cooperative policies discussed at the summit. The Emperor stood and walked to his window, looking out at the vastness of space. For 3,000 years, his empire had been built on a simple principle: submit or be destroyed. It had worked perfectly. Until now. Where are the humans now? Still on Kepler 442b, Your Majesty. They appear to be teaching. Teaching what? Everything, sir. Captain Kim is conducting seminars on conflict resolution. Dr. Lee is sharing scientific research methods. Engineer Park is demonstrating collaborative problem-solving techniques. They've essentially turned the planet into a galactic university. The Emperor closed his eyes. He had sent the humans to Kepler 442b to die, proving that their friendliness was weakness. Instead, they had created something that threatened the very foundation of his empire. Sir, the advisor continued hesitantly, there's something else. We've intercepted communications suggesting that some worlds are planning to formally declare independence from the Empire and join what they're calling the Galactic Cooperative. How many worlds? The number keeps growing. Current estimates suggest nearly 200 systems are considering the switch. 200 systems. Nearly a quarter of his empire. The Emperor sat down heavily on his throne. What do they offer that we do not? Hope, Your Majesty. They offer hope. Meanwhile, on the desert world of Eridus Prime, hydrologist Sora Bay was making a discovery that would change everything for that planet's inhabitants. The world had been strip-mined for rare crystals by the Empire, leaving behind a wasteland where millions of people struggled to survive. Sora had arrived as part of the growing network of human specialists who were traveling between worlds, sharing Earth's knowledge and learning from alien civilizations. What she found on Eridus Prime broke her heart. The Empire took everything, explained Keth, a local leader whose people resembled tall, thin lizards with iridescent scales. They mined our crystals, polluted our water sources, and left us to die slowly in the desert they created. How do you survive? Sora asked, looking at the barren landscape stretching to the horizon. We import water from off-world. It costs us everything we produce, leaving nothing for development or improvement. We exist, but we do not live. Sora spent 3 days studying the planet's geology with her portable equipment. On the 4th day, she made an announcement that brought the entire settlement running. You're not going to believe this, she told Keth and the gathered crowd. There's water here, lots of water. An entire underground ocean sitting about 50 meters below the mining zone. That's impossible. Imperial surveys found no significant water reserves. Imperial surveys were looking for crystals, not water. They missed it completely. Sora showed them her readings on a portable display. This aquifer extends for thousands of kilometers. There's enough clean, fresh water here to support millions of people. The news spread across Eridus Prime like wildfire. Within hours, mining equipment was being converted into drilling rigs. The same technology the Empire had used to exploit the planet was now being used to restore it. When the first well struck water 3 days later, the celebration could be seen from orbit. For the first time in 50 years, the people of Eridus Prime had hope for the future. We declare our independence from the Varaxian Empire, Keth announced to the cheering crowds, and we formally request to join the Galactic Cooperative, in gratitude to the humans who gave us back our world. The pattern repeated itself across the galaxy. On the industrial world of Mechanicus, engineer Taehyun's efficiency improvements reduced working hours by half while doubling productivity. The grateful workers renamed their planet New Busan and declared independence within a week. On the war-torn planet Gladius, philosopher Woo Jin Kim introduced the concept of conflict resolution. Through dialogue, the planet's warrior culture didn't disappear. Instead, they became the galaxy's most effective peacekeepers, spreading the new philosophy of cooperation through strength rather than dominance. Each world that joined the growing cooperative shared their resources and knowledge freely. The crystal growers of New Sigma helped terraform the 6 months after their accidental arrival in the Voraxian throne room. Captain Jiwoo Kim received the most surprising message of her career. It came through official Imperial channels, written on the Emperor's personal stationery, and delivered by a nervous-looking alien diplomat who insisted on reading it aloud. His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Thexmore the Eternal, formally requests the honor of Captain Jiwoo Kim's presence at his surrender ceremony, to be held in the Grand Throne Room of the Imperial Palace. Refreshments will be served. Jiwoo stared at the messenger. I'm sorry, did you say surrender ceremony? Yes, Captain. The Emperor wishes to formally surrender the Varaxian Empire to you. To me? But I don't want an empire. The messenger looked as confused as Jiwoo felt. Perhaps you should discuss this with His Imperial Majesty directly. Back on Kepler 442b, the human crew gathered in their temporary headquarters, a building that had somehow evolved from a simple meeting room into the unofficial capital of the rapidly growing Galactic Cooperative. I don't understand, Dr. Yunji said, reviewing the invitation for the 3rd time. Why would the Emperor want to surrender? We're not at war with him. Maybe that's exactly the point, suggested Chief Medical Officer Hyun. We've accidentally created something more powerful than his empire, and he's smart enough to recognize it. Engineer Tae-hyun looked up from his latest project, a communication system that could handle real-time translation between over 300 different alien languages. The numbers don't lie. Over 600 worlds have joined the cooperative now. That's more than 2/3 of all inhabited systems in the galaxy. But they joined voluntarily, protested Captain Jiwoo. We never conquered anyone. We never threatened anyone. We just helped people solve problems. Maybe that's the most dangerous weapon of all, observed Security Chief Yuna. An idea so appealing that people choose it freely. Philosopher Woojin Kim, who had returned from New Gladius just in time for this crisis, offered his perspective. Throughout history, empires have fallen when they could no longer convince their subjects that obedience was preferable to freedom. We accidentally showed the galaxy what freedom could look like. So what do? Asked Communications Officer Minho. Do we go to this surrender ceremony? Captain Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened, since their navigation error had dropped them into the middle of galactic politics. Then she smiled. Of course we go, but not to accept an empire. We go to help an old friend figure out what comes next. The journey back to the Imperial Palace took place in a convoy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The new soul was accompanied by ships from dozens of cooperative worlds, but they came as friends and allies, not as conquerors. Representatives from the crystal beings of New Sigma flew in formations that created beautiful light patterns. The industrial ships from New Busan carried gifts of food and medical supplies for the palace staff. The peacekeepers from New Gladius served as honor guards, but their weapons remained powered down as a sign of peaceful intent. When the convoy arrived at the Imperial Palace, they found something extraordinary waiting for them. The massive structure that had once been a monument to conquest and fear had been transformed. Banners from hundreds of different worlds hung from the crystal walls. Gardens had been planted in spaces that once held weapons of war. The throne room itself had been converted into what looked like the galaxy's largest conference center. Emperor Thexmore stood waiting in the center of it all, but he looked very different from the terrifying ruler the humans had first met. Gone was the intimidating armor and the aura of menace. Instead, he wore simple robes and had an expression that could almost be called relaxed. Captain Kim, he said as the human crew approached. Welcome back to my palace, though I suppose it's not really mine anymore. What do you mean? Jiwoo asked. Look around you. This building has become the meeting place for representatives from across the galaxy. My staff spend their days helping organize cultural exchanges, trade agreements, and cooperative research projects. My throne room hosts diplomatic conferences instead of executions. My empire has become useful. Dr. Yunji was already taking notes, fascinated by the transformation. This is incredible. You've turned a palace of conquest into a center of cooperation. I had help, the Emperor replied, gesturing to his blue advisor, who was now wearing a badge that read, Cultural Exchange Coordinator. My advisors discovered that organizing voluntary cooperation is much more interesting than managing forced submission. But why the surrender ceremony? Asked Captain Jiwoo. Emperor Thexmore smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features but somehow suited him. Because I finally understand what you have created here. The Varaxian Empire was based on fear and force. It required constant military action to maintain. It consumed resources without creating value, and it made enemies out of potential allies. Your galactic cooperative is everything my empire was not. Voluntary, beneficial, and self-sustaining. So, you want to dissolve the empire? I want to transform it into something worthy of the galaxy it serves. But such a transformation requires leadership that people trust and respect. Leadership like yours. Jiwoo shook her head firmly. I'm an explorer, not an emperor. I never wanted to rule anyone. Which is exactly why you should, the emperor replied. You've proven that the best leaders are those who serve others rather than themselves. Your crew has shown that cooperation achieves more than conquest. Your species has demonstrated that kindness is stronger than fear. But I don't know how to run a galactic government. Neither did I when I started. The difference is that you'll have help. The Emperor gestured to the transformed throne room, where representatives from hundreds of worlds were working together on various projects. Every world in the cooperative contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. No one rules alone. The formal ceremony that followed was unlike any surrender in galactic history. Instead of conquering armies and defeated enemies, there were friendship delegations and celebration feasts. Instead of demanding tribute, the new Galactic Cooperative established mutual aid agreements. Instead of installing governors and occupation forces, they set up cultural exchange programs and research partnerships. Emperor Thexmore's surrender was actually more like a retirement party. He formally dissolved the Varaxian Empire and transferred all imperial assets to the Galactic Cooperative. Then he announced his new position as Cultural Heritage Advisor, a role that would involve preserving the history of conquered civilizations and helping worlds reconnect with their lost traditions. For 3,000 years I destroyed cultures, he told the assembled delegates. I would like to spend whatever time remains to me, helping to restore them. The crowd's response was not the cheering victory cry of conquerors, but something much more powerful, the warm applause of people welcoming a former enemy into their community. Captain Jiwoo found herself reluctantly accepting the position of Coordinator General of the Galactic Cooperative, with the understanding that it was a temporary role until proper democratic institutions could be established. Her first official act was to establish the Galactic Council, with representatives from every member world having an equal voice in governance. Her second act was to organize the galaxy's first interstellar potluck dinner. The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days and featured foods from over 700 different worlds. The former Emperor's combat dancers performed alongside traditional musicians from dozens of species. Children from across the galaxy played together in the palace gardens, while their parents discussed plans for joint research projects and cultural exchanges. Dr. Yunji established the Galactic Research Consortium, linking scientists from every member world in the largest collaborative research network in history. Engineer Taihyun founded the Interstellar Engineering Guild, sharing technological innovations freely among all worlds. Chief Medical Officer Haiyan created the Universal Health Service, ensuring that medical knowledge and treatment were available to every species in the galaxy. 6 months later, Captain Jiwoo was reviewing progress reports in what had once been the Emperor's private office. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding faster than anyone had imagined possible. Trade was flourishing between worlds that had never communicated before. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as researchers shared knowledge freely. Art and culture were experiencing a renaissance as species rediscovered traditions that had been suppressed for centuries. Captain, Communications Officer Minho announced from the doorway, "We're getting reports from the Outer Rim. 3 more. Systems have requested to join the cooperative. How many does that make total?" Over 900 inhabited worlds. That's essentially the entire known galaxy. Jiwoo leaned back in her chair and shook her head in amazement. And it all started with a navigation error. Former Emperor Thexmore, now dressed in the simple robes of a scholar, appeared in the doorway carrying a stack of historical documents. "Captain, I've finished cataloging the cultural artifacts from the Altair system. The survivors are very excited about reconnecting with their traditional practices. That's wonderful. How are you enjoying your new job?"